I held the stem of my wine glass between my fingers, swirling the deep red liquid as I laughed at a joke one of the department heads had just told. The annual corporate gala was in full swing, the orchestra's music rising to fill the grand ballroom as more couples took to the dance floor. It was in that moment that Ethan Vance made his entrance, fashionably late as usual, with his new personal assistant, Clara Jenkins, following a step behind him. I watched from across the room as he paused near the entryway to help her adjust the strap of her gown. A small, self-satisfied smile played on his lips, the kind he got when he felt he had done something clever. Ethan always did have a particular talent for spotting potential. The couture dress Clara was wearing was stunning, and it undeniably elevated her appearance, making her look more sophisticated than she was. But no matter how you dress it up, a sparrow will never become a bird of paradise. As they started making their way across the room toward our table, I kept the pleasant smile fixed on my face, but inside, a cold feeling began to spread through my chest, sinking deep into my stomach. I had seen Ethan at the Chanel boutique earlier that morning, and my heart had warmed, assuming he was picking out a gown for me to wear to the gala. I was so certain that I had my stylist create a specific hairstyle to match the dress I imagined he had bought. But as the hours passed and the party began, no dress ever arrived. I even called him, hinting about a possible surprise, but he had been dismissive on the phone, quickly ending the call. Even then, I could detect a faint note of guilt in his voice. It was then that the first seed of doubt was planted, the slow dawning realization that the man I married was changing. Clara walked dutifully beside Ethan, offering me a polite, almost rehearsed smile when they reached the table. There was a familiar look of warmth in her eyes that I found unsettlingly recognizable. "Amelia, hello," she said softly. My own smile didn't waver in response to her greeting, though I felt my gaze turn a little sharper, a little colder. I let my eyes travel from her face down to the dress and back up again, my assessment slow and deliberate. "That's a beautiful dress. It's the same design I had on order." Everyone at the table was intelligent. There was no need for me to spell it out any further. The implication was clear enough for anyone who needed to understand. How could a recent graduate, new to the workforce, possibly afford a gown of that caliber on her own? Ethan's eyes met mine, and his brow furrowed in disapproval, a silent reprimand for embarrassing her. Still, he felt the need to offer an explanation. "Amelia, it's not what you think. Clara mentioned she's never been to an event this formal and didn't have anything appropriate to wear. She was worried she would look out of place. She's been so hardworking lately, so I decided to reward her with it as a bonus." I crossed my arms over my chest, letting a playful, challenging smile touch my lips. "CEO Vance, what a generous man you are, casually giving away a dress that costs over $200,000. I caught my own assistant's eye and gave her a subtle nod. A moment later, a procession of 20 sales associates from the boutique entered the ballroom, each carrying a garment bag containing a couture gown. They walked in a straight line and stopped directly in front of Ethan, who was now looking at me with complete confusion. "It's time to pay the bill," I said, lifting my chin slightly. "All 20 of our executives brought their assistants tonight. Every one of them is more dedicated than the last. Surely you wouldn't want to be accused of playing favorites, would you, Ethan?" The color drained from Clara's face as soon as she processed my words. Her expression was a mixture of deep humiliation and a burning resentment. She shot a worried glance at Ethan before turning to me. "Amelia, you've misunderstood. This is all my fault. I'll take the dress back right now. Please don't make things difficult for Mr. Vance." After she spoke, she gave Ethan another look, this one full of affection, and made a move as if to leave. Listening to her, you would think I was some villainous queen from a fairy tale, trying to separate two star-crossed lovers. "Clara, is it? You're thinking too much. It's only 20 gowns. The total is just over 4 million. That's hardly making things difficult." "Isn't that right, Ethan?" Ethan looked at me, a faint, unreadable smile on his face, and gave a slight shake of his head. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a black credit card, and handed it to the lead salesperson. He then walked calmly to my side, slipping an arm around my waist and leaning in to whisper close to my ear. "It's just a dress. It's not worth getting this upset about. You might scare the new staff, but If you make yourself sick with anger, I'll be the one who's heartbroken. His tone was light, almost teasing, as if we were discussing something completely unimportant, effortlessly trying to change the subject. A cold smile formed on my lips. I reached up with both hands to adjust his collar, smoothing the fabric as I spoke in a low, measured voice. Clara has feelings for you. I'm sure a man as perceptive as you has already noticed that. I know you don't care about the 4 million, and I know this is the first time something like this has happened. I expect it to be the last. You should know better than anyone that Amelia Vance is not a woman to be trifled with. The employees nearby, assuming we were just sharing an intimate moment, began to cheer and tease us good-naturedly. I looked at the handsome face so close to mine, a face I knew so well, and felt my carefully composed expression begin to stiffen. Don't worry, he murmured back, his voice for my ears only. My relationship with Clara is strictly professional. You're overthinking this. What will our employees think if they see you like this? I made a soft humming sound in my throat and dropped my hands from his collar. Humiliating him further wouldn't bring me any satisfaction. Fighting over a girl who was, in the grand scheme of things, unremarkable was beneath me. Besides, I didn't have any concrete proof of wrongdoing, at least not yet. I took Ethan's hand, and together we walked to the center of the ballroom to deliver the opening remarks for the annual review. The other assistants, all of them sharp and clever women, were now joyfully showing off their new gowns right in front of Clara. We have Assistant Jenkins to thank for this. We get to wear such expensive dresses now, another one added, her voice dripping with false sweetness. In Mr. Vance's world, giving someone a dress is like giving a child a piece of candy. You wouldn't get any strange ideas about him because of it, would you, Clara? Your smile really does remind me of someone. No wonder Mr. Vance thinks so highly of you. The comments continued, each one a thinly veiled warning disguised as a compliment. Honestly, Mr. Vance has it all: looks, status, and wealth. He has plenty of women admiring him, so it's understandable if you developed a little crush. But look over there, Mrs. Vance is standing right by his side. Do you honestly believe you have a chance? The final cut came from a senior assistant. Mr. Vance was born into a world of privilege, so he might not understand the significance of a man giving a woman clothing. But as his personal assistant, you should know better than to blur professional boundaries. Their words were laced with mockery, and Clara, who had probably never experienced such public humiliation in her life, simply stood there, her fist clenched and her head bowed. A moment later, her eyes red with tears, she turned and ran out of the ballroom. She didn't come back for the rest of the evening. After dinner, Ethan and I made a polite exit, leaving early so the employees could enjoy the rest of the night without feeling watched. I had a few glasses of wine, so Ethan drove. The moment I got into the passenger side of the car, I noticed the seat had been moved. It was pushed much farther back than I ever kept it. No one else would ever presume to have Ethan act as their driver, and certainly no one would be ignorant enough to take the passenger seat, which was implicitly mine. I didn't need to guess who had been sitting there. A sudden, hot wave of anger washed over me. I didn't want to admit it, but in that moment, I was genuinely furious. Even when I realized Ethan had given my dress to Clara, I had only felt a pang of disappointment and the loss of a beautiful garment. But this felt different. Her presence leaving a mark in my most personal space felt like a direct and intentional provocation. In 3 years of marriage, I had never felt anger like this. Just as I was about to confront him, his phone rang. Ethan answered it calmly. Okay, don't worry, I'm on my way. My hand, which had been on the seat adjustment controls, froze. I slowly lifted my head to look at him. He frowned slightly. Clara's at the boutique trying to return the dress, but she doesn't have the receipt. I need to go over there. I'll call the driver to come get you. You go on home first. I stared at him, my voice filled with disbelief. For something that trivial, you're going to leave me here? After I've been drinking? Amelia, don't make this difficult, he said, his voice taking on an edge of frustration. The girl has a lot of pride. After what you did tonight, she's been crying so hard she can barely speak. She just wants to return the dress. Is it pride, or is she trying to provoke me? I replied coldly. Couldn't she just come and get the receipt from you herself? Why do you have to deliver it to her? Ethan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, his expression was distant and cold. Amelia, does bullying a new employee give you some sort of satisfaction? When did you become the kind of person who throws her weight around like this? The intense anger I had felt just moments before vanished instantly, replaced by a vast, hollow sense of disappointment. Suddenly, the whole situation felt absurd. I was the one abusing my power. Ethan, I said, my voice quiet. This is the first time you've ever defended another woman to my face. Without waiting for a response, I took out my phone and called our driver. I hope you're prepared to accept the consequences of your actions tonight. You're always so domineering, he shot back, his voice rising. If things don't go exactly your way, you get upset. We're husband and wife, not a boss and a subordinate. Your attitude at work is suffocating to bring home. He paused, then added, I'm not coming home tonight. I'm going to stay at the old family house for a few days. I think we both need some space to cool down. So that was it. This feeling must be what people called weariness, what people called disgust. He used to tell me he loved my independence and my strong will more than anything. Now he was clearly captivated by another woman's gentle demeanor and was beginning to resent me for being too assertive. Why did he need to invent such a noble-sounding excuse for himself? I quietly got out of the car. As I watched his taillights disappear down the street, I pulled my phone back out and made another call. Mr. Lee, it's Amelia Vance. Please draft a divorce agreement for me. Ethan, I gave you a chance and you threw it away. I never wanted it to come to this, but you left me no choice. The Vances and my family, the Blakes, had been friends for generations. Ethan and I had practically grown up together. After high school, he went to study abroad, and we fell out of touch for 5 or 6 years. We reconnected at a family dinner party. He had changed, becoming more mature and composed, effortlessly navigating the questions from our elders. In the years he was away, I had met my share of impressive men, but seeing Ethan again was different. He was like a mountain I suddenly felt compelled to climb. We fell back into our old, easy familiarity, which quickly grew into mutual admiration. Before long, we were engaged, and soon after, we were married. When we got married, we made an agreement. For the sake of both our family names, there would be no affairs, no messy nights out at clubs. After the wedding, our two family conglomerates became powerful allies, and both our careers soared. Now, if we were to divorce, dividing our entangled assets was going to be complicated. When I finally got home and showered, my head was throbbing. I pushed all thoughts of the divorce from my mind and fell into an exhausted sleep. The next morning, as I was walking into the company building, a man rushing out bumped into me hard. My briefcase flew from my hand, sending documents scattering across the polished floor. I was wearing high heels, and the impact twisted my ankle, causing me to stumble and drop my phone, which hit the ground with a sickening crack. A security guard rushed over to help me up while berating the man who had run into me. The man looked frantic, hastily gathering my papers and my broken phone. He kept apologizing over and over, and when he saw the shattered screen, he looked so distraught that I thought he might actually drop to his knees. I ignored the phone, focusing on the documents, frowning as I put the pages back in order. Just then, Ethan's car pulled up. He got out and saw the scene. Me, standing over this man who was apologizing profusely. Ethan stood a short distance away, watching me quietly with a severe expression on his face. In his eyes, I saw a flicker of that same disgust from the night before. I was sure that from his perspective, it looked like I was once again bullying someone weaker than me. The optics of the situation were admittedly not in my favor. I no longer cared what he thought. I waved the security guards away. A man's dignity is his most valuable asset. Don't be so quick to kneel. You can lose anything else, but not that. You can go. You don't need to pay for the phone. Thank you, the man said, bowing repeatedly before hurrying away. I didn't give him a second thought. Back in my office, I flexed my ankle. Fortunately, it wasn't seriously injured. It was only then that I noticed a small scuff on the toe of my leather shoe. It wasn't a large mark, but it was an imperfection. Once something is flawed, it can never be perfect again. It felt like a metaphor for my relationship with Ethan. That look of disgust he'd given me this morning, he probably wasn't even aware of it, but I saw it clearly. It was like a thorn lodged in my heart, impossible to ignore and impossible to remove. Late that afternoon, just before the end of the workday, Ethan walked into my office. Clara followed a few steps behind him. I watched them silently from my desk. Ethan sat down on the sofa across from me and sighed. Because of what happened at the gala, Clara said she's been getting targeted by other employees all day. I continued my work, not even bothering to look up. What's the problem? The esteemed assistant to the CEO can't handle a little workplace friction? Does she need the great Mr. Vance himself to come and fight her battles? Amelia, I'm just saying, don't make things difficult for new hires. Keep your people in line. Ethan, have you known me for only a day? If I wanted to act against someone, do you really think Clara would still have a job in this company? Besides, when I have a problem with someone, I confront them directly. I don't resort to petty, indirect tactics. Ethan, whatever Clara tells you now, you just believe her without question, don't you? My direct questioning seemed to fluster him. Just keep your people in check, he repeated, irritated. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. I looked at him, my gaze cold. Ethan, are you blind? My words angered him, and he fell silent. At that moment, Clara, who had been standing quietly by the door, spoke up, her eyes red and welling with tears. It's not Mr. Vance's fault, Amelia. I'm so sorry. It was the first time I had ever received such an expensive gift, and I think I got carried away. I offended you, and I apologize. But this has nothing to do with Mr. Vance. Please don't speak to him that way. Her hypocritical performance was so astounding that I did laugh this time. Ethan, you've certainly hired quite an assistant. She's more fiercely protective of you than anyone I know. So this is the kind of devotion you enjoy now. Her tears seemed to be his breaking point. For the first time, he lost his temper with me completely, his voice sharp as he demanded, You will apologize to Clara. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Me? Amelia Vance? I would argue a point even when I was wrong, let alone when I was so clearly in the right. For me to apologize to her? That would only happen on the day the sun rises in the west. That day, Ethan and I left things on very bad terms. The next day, he took Clara with him on a business trip. While they were gone, I went shopping with my best friend, and we ended up at a bar where I told her everything that had happened. She told me I lived my life too rigidly, that I should learn to be more carefree. But I have my principles, and Clara clearly doesn't. In the end, it was simple. The love was gone. I no longer cared for what was never truly mine to keep. I just don't understand what he's thinking, I said. He doesn't want the real thing, so he seeks out a cheap substitute. Does he love you or not? She asked. I scoffed. Maybe the substitute is gentler, more considerate, a more comforting presence. Are you really going through with the divorce? She asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Absolutely, I confirmed. The agreement is already drafted. He'll be back from his trip just in time for the monthly family dinner. I'm going to present it to him then, in front of his parents. Divorcing Ethan was a monumental task. Our family companies were deeply interconnected. I needed to ensure my exit strategy was flawless. In the meantime, Clara was not staying quiet. She updated her social media feed multiple times a day with pictures from the trip. Breakfast with Ethan, working late together at the hotel, and photos of them trying activities clearly meant for couples like skydiving and scuba diving. When my assistant showed me the phone, her expression was cautious. I scrolled through Clara's entire feed without a change in my expression. Fine, Ethan. If you want to disgust me this way, then don't blame me when I stop playing fair. A few days later, a package arrived for me. Inside was a USB drive and a stack of photographs. The pictures showed Ethan asleep in a hotel bed with Clara nestled in his arms. His upper body was bare, and the angry red hickeys on his chest were impossible to miss. He hadn't even returned from the trip, but the evidence of his affair had arrived before him. My posture, usually ramrod straight, seemed to slump. A tight knot formed in my chest, a sharp and searing pain. With trembling hands, I picked up the USB drive and inserted it into my laptop. The video showed them at dusk on the hotel balcony. Ethan was holding Clara's face in his hands. They stared into each other's eyes for a long moment before they leaned in and kissed deeply. I snapped the laptop shut. "Who sent this?" I asked my assistant. "Sorry, I'm not sure. It was delivered by a courier to the front desk." I let out a long, heavy breath. I carefully placed the photos and the drive back into a folder and locked it in my desk drawer. "Keep this quiet for now and find out who sent that package." I didn't need an investigation to know. It had to be Clara, that desperate social climber. "Ethan, you have really made a mess of things this time." On the third day, Ethan returned to the office. His first order of business was to make an example of the two employees who had been the most vocal in their mockery of Clara. He fired them. I wasn't surprised that he would defend her so openly. After all, they were sleeping together now. It was only natural that he would offer her some form of protection. What did surprise me was that he brought her to the Vance family dinner that weekend. Clara arrived bearing many expensive gifts from my mother-in-law, all high-end luxury items that I knew Ethan had paid for. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me arrive, she went to the study to call my father-in-law and Ethan down for dinner. When Ethan came downstairs, he glanced at me for a moment before guiltily looking away. Clara followed closely behind him. After Ethan took his seat at the dining table, she confidently sat down in the chair right next to him. My chair. Ethan looked at her, a flicker of surprise on his face, but he didn't say anything. Seeing that he didn't object, Clara grew bolder and turned to provoke me directly. "Amelia, come and sit down. You're holding up dinner for everyone." Her smug expression was painfully obvious. To bring your mistress to your family home before we are even divorced, to let her take my seat at the table and openly taunt me, it was a slap in the face. Seeing the tense atmosphere, my mother-in-law hurried to my side and tried to pull me toward the seat next to her. "Amelia, dear, come sit with me," she said kindly. "I had the cook make your favorite braised prawns tonight. You must eat plenty." Watching her try so desperately to keep the peace, I felt a wave of bitterness rise in my throat. But swallowing my pride has never been my style. I held her hand and said apologetically, "Mom, I won't be staying for dinner tonight. I came because I have something very important to say." Her smile faltered. "Whatever it is, surely it can wait until after we eat." I shook my head and looked directly at Ethan. Then, my voice clear and steady, I spoke. "Dad, Mom, Ethan and I are getting a divorce." The dining room fell completely silent. My father-in-law looked from me to Ethan, his gaze finally settling on Clara. "Your relationship has always been so strong. Don't make such a drastic decision over something trivial," he said. My mother-in-law quickly added, "That's right, Amelia. Whatever the problem is, tell me. I'll support you." Ethan stood up abruptly, the legs of his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Amelia, have you had enough of this drama?" I pointed a finger at my chest in disbelief. "I'm the one causing drama? Is this still just about me being upset that you gave my dress to Clara? You have enough clothes to wear something different every day for a year, and you want a divorce over a single dress?" My father-in-law slammed his hand on the table. "Shut up, Ethan," he roared. Then, his voice softening, he turned to me. "Amelia, you tell us what happened." "Ethan, I was going to try and save you some embarrassment in front of your parents, but since you don't seem to want it, then don't blame me for what comes next." I tossed the document folder onto the center of the table. Ethan snatched it immediately. As he opened it, the photograph spilled out across the polished wood. He looked at the pictures and the color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. My mother-in-law picked one up with a trembling hand. "Ethan, is this true?" she whispered. My father-in-law's face was a thunderous mask as he waited for an explanation. Ethan stumbled back a step, catching himself on the edge of the table. "No, I was drunk that day. He stammered. His father slumped back in his chair, defeated, while his mother began to pound her fists against Ethan's shoulders, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do something so foolish? How will you face Amelia?" "Amelia, listen to me," Ethan panicked, grabbing my hand so tightly it hurt. "It's not what it looks like. I was just drunk that day. Really, you have to believe me." I forcefully pulled my arm from his grasp. He saw the unyielding resolve in my eyes and seemed to remember something. He spun around and stared at Clara, who was cowering in a corner of the room. He dragged her forward, his face contorted with rage. "Speak. Tell her right now that nothing happened between us. Clara stood there, pale as a ghost, her body shaking. I I don't know, Mr. Vance. You have to believe me. I don't know how Mrs. Vance got those photos, she whimpered. I told you to tell her that nothing happened, he shouted. Why are you talking about irrelevant things? But Mr. Vance, what you're saying isn't true, she sobbed. He advanced on her, his voice low and menacing. Say it again. Nothing happened between us. Say it clearly. She backed away, her voice trembling. Mr. Vance, please, you're scaring me. I remember you were drunk that day. We were watching the sunset on the balcony, and you held my face. And then you... She glanced at me, tears streaming down her cheeks before lowering her head. You mistook me for Mrs. Vance. You held me and kept calling her name. I was drunk too. I couldn't push you away, and then... Then what? Say it! Ethan yelled. I couldn't resist, she sobbed. I was going to keep this a secret forever. I don't know why Mrs. Vance has videos and photos of it. Ethan forced a bitter, broken laugh. Impossible. I could never mistake you for her, because you are not worthy. His words struck Clara like a physical blow. Her tears stopped for a moment before she gritted her teeth, turned, and ran from the house. Ethan turned back to me, his expression full of sorrow. Amelia, you have to believe me. You are the only one I love. It doesn't matter anymore, I replied coldly. We're getting a divorce. He rushed to block my path, grabbing my hand again. No, I won't agree. It's because I love you so much that I was lenient with Clara. I saw a glimpse of your younger self in her. I raised a hand to cut him off, not wanting to hear any more of his nonsense. But she is not me. I don't doubt that you loved me once, Ethan. But I'm 30 years old now. I'm not as young or as obedient as other girls. My personality is strong, and I'm not as gentle as you seem to want. He pleaded, his voice cracking. That's just what you think. It's not true. Just give me one more chance. I can explain everything. I didn't want to take her on the business trip, but she begged me. Said she was afraid of being targeted at the office. The activities she posted online were all organized by our business partners. I had nothing to do with them. As for the kiss, he swallowed hard. That is the only thing I did to betray you. I swear nothing else happened. I was wrong. Can you forgive me this one time? Please, let's not get a divorce. I'm begging you. I just stared at him, my expression unmoved. So you're saying I've made you feel suffocated? I pulled the divorce agreement from my bag and handed it to him. Sign this, and you'll be free. I've tried to make the division of assets as fair as possible. If you have objections, we can discuss them for our parents' sake. Is there really no room for discussion? He asked, a bitter smile on his face. No, I said firmly. Just then, my father-in-law slammed the table again, stood up, and stormed upstairs without another word. My mother-in-law was weeping quietly beside us. How did it come to this? She whispered. I was hoping you two would have a child this year. In just 3 short years, all the love and sweetness we once shared had dissolved into nothing. I returned to my parents' home and told them my decision. They were shocked, but ultimately they respected my choice. My dad sighed. I don't know if teaching you to be so independent was a good thing or not. Ethan refused to sign the divorce papers. I had to leave for a business trip abroad, so I left the matter in the hands of my lawyer. By the time I returned a month later, I was met with shocking news. Ethan had been in a serious car accident. The person responsible was Clara. It turned out that after the disastrous family dinner, Ethan had begun to systematically ruin her life. In a desperate act, she tried to kidnap him for ransom. I found out later from my father that Clara had never actually liked Ethan. Her own father was deeply in debt to loan sharks, and her entire plan was to seduce Ethan for his money. When she failed and instead caused our divorce, she faced Ethan's full retaliatory power, which pushed her over the edge. Her kidnapping attempt went wrong, ending in the car crash. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The next day, I went to the hospital with a bouquet of flowers. I knocked on the door to his room, and a muffled voice from inside yelled, "Get out! Leave me alone!" "Ethan, it's me, Amelia." The door remained closed. A few minutes later, a nurse came out and handed me a document. It was the divorce agreement, signed. I took it and met with my lawyer to finalize everything. A few days after that, while I was at lunch, I was suddenly overwhelmed with a wave of nausea. I went to the hospital for a checkup and discovered I was 8 weeks pregnant. My period had been late, but I had attributed it to the stress and travel. I had never considered this possibility. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach, unsure of what to do. That night, I told my parents. Their faces lit up with pure joy at the thought of becoming grandparents. Seeing my hesitation, my mother asked cautiously, "Amelia, you don't want it?" I managed a small smile. I wasn't sure at first, but seeing you both this happy, I couldn't possibly spoil the mood. They both visibly relaxed. "Exactly," my father said. "The child is innocent, and this is a Blake family baby. It's not as if we can't afford to raise it." He glanced at me, his expression still cautious. I looked at their hopeful faces, and a genuine smile finally broke through. I said, my voice loud and clear, "Congratulations, you're going to be grandparents."